Oke, kita tunggu lengkap dulu ya.
Maaf, mau mastiin ini untuk stopwatch-nya udah kelihatan kan ya?
Udah
Udah.
kelihatan.
Oke, makasih.
Ini kurang satu ya, yang DTI. DTI bisa ini nggak, temannya dicariin gitu nggak?
Bisa sebentar ya, Kak.
Oke.
Sudah ya, Kak, sudah lengkap dari DTI juga.
Oke, nanti kan udah ada nih stopwatch-nya. Kalian boleh POI-nya waktu menit pertama sampai menit ke-6. Setelah menit ke-6 nggak boleh ya. Terus ya udah nanti urutannya biasa. First speaker governments, prime minister, first speaker opposition, dan seterusnya. Nggak perlu nungguin aku. Kayak if you want to check am I audible or not, I will say it to you, but if not, just go ahead and start the debate, okay? So without further ado, no, wait a second. What is the motion? Sorry.
The House as the environmental movement will provide advocacy of individual responsibility over policy level change.
Okay, policy level changes. Okay, sure. Without further ado, let's call upon the Prime Minister. Here.
Okay, good evening and welcome to the second preliminary round of OIM FTUI debate competition. My name is Cleo and I will be a chairman for this round, and Oman will be the timekeeper for this round. For this round of debate, the motion is this House as the environmental movement will prioritize advocacy of individual responsibility over police level change. From the government team, we have team Department Metallurgy and Material with Mr. Fatih Ali as the first speaker, Ms. Kansa as the second speaker, and Ms. Eva Mutiara as the third speaker. And lastly, Ms. Kansa as the reply speaker. From the opposition team, we have team from Department Teknik Industri with Ms. Ayu Anya as the first speaker, Ms. Fauzia Hafida as the second speaker, and Ms. Chrysotomus as the third speaker, and finally Ms. Fauzia as the reply speaker. The rules of debates are: 1. Each substantive speaker will deliver their speech for 7 minutes and 20 seconds. Reply speaker will deliver their speech for 4 minutes and 20 seconds. On the substantive speaker, we will send a chat via Zoom once on the first minute, indicating that the POI are allowed. On the 6 minutes to indicate POI are not longer allowed. On the 7 minutes and multiple times on 7 minutes and 20 seconds to indicate that the speaker have to end their speech. On replay speech, we will send a via Zoom once on the first minute, on the third minute, on the fourth minute, and multiple time on 4 minutes and 20 seconds. and no POIs are allowed in reply speaker. Without further ado, let's start the debate. I call upon the first speaker from the government team, Mr. Fatih Ali.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Fatih Kincana, and I'm here as the first speaker of the government team. The motion of today is this House as an environmental movement will prioritize the advocacy of individual responsibility over policy level changes. And our stance is that we fully support it. Today, as first speaker, I'll be talking to you about why individual actually matters, why by proposing this motion, the advocacy of environmental movement would be easier to achieve its aim, and why it's justified for us to not prioritize policy level changes. And before we go any further, I would like to define this motion. This House as the environmental movement will prioritize the advocacy of individual responsibility over policy level changes. This means that we will put forward advocacy of individual responsibility over policy level changes. And what we would like to define individual responsibility is the idea that humans being chose, instigate, or otherwise cause their own actions. A corollary idea is that because we cause our actions, we can be held morally accountable or legally liable. And what we would like to define policy level change is policy level change refers to incremental shifts in existing structures or new innovative policies. And I would like to put emphasis on this. Policy level change is different than policy reform, which is a major policy change. And the status quo of this motion is that there isn't any
POI.
no, thank you. There isn't any priority, and there hasn't been a focus on one thing. And the urgency of this motion is that after all the effort that has been made, the impact is not that significant, and we are still in big crisis. So we need to decide now and focus on one thing. The future impact of this motion is that the decision that has been made will have a more positive impact on the environment and act as a catalyst to the environmental movement. And we will limit this motion to Indonesia. I would like to give you our first argument on why individual actually matters. With individual responsibility, people can already have the responsibility to do what is good for the earth, where you make huge or small behavioral changes. Individual changes are more spontaneous, faster, and have a much shorter bureaucratic path than waiting for regulatory changes from the government. And we acknowledge that it will not fix the bigger picture of the case, but yes, individual acts to contribute to act of change itself. Also, we are not putting all responsibility on individuals alone, but we need focus. We need more focus towards individual responsibility. Our second argument is that why by proposing with this motion, the advocacy of environmental movement would be easier to achieve its aim. When a movement is carried out based on one's own desires, it will run better and maximal and more optimum. Because if it only relies on government policy, there is no self-will. The movement will not run optimally and will only run in the form of a formality, but it does not achieve the initial goals. And the third one is why it's justified for us to not prioritize policy level changes. Changes to regulation from the government take a long time. Given the problems raised have high urgency and require immediate treatment to make policy level changes. You go through a lot of phases, and it's a major change that will affect a lot of sides. For example, with the new policy, Deputy Chairman of Indonesian Plastic Industry Association, or INAPLAS, Budi Susanto Sadiman, admitted his objection. According to him, this ban will hit the industry and potentially make around 5,000 people out of work, yet to count other sector. And I would like to give example on why individual responsibility is better to prioritize than policy level changes is that the usage of plastic because individual responsibility and awareness has been the law of that has been made in 1997, but yet we still see a lot of trash, a lot of garbage in our current condition. And there are also law that prohibits plastics and prohibits supermarket and cafe to give plastic bag and plastic straw. And from the 44 cities that applied that law, only Denpasar and Bandung succeeded on achieving the goal. And as you can see from that, we need the fundamentals, and the fundamentals of this to build this to have a environmental friendly. We need a fundamental, and our fundamental is individual responsibility, as we can see from the example that I just said. From the example that I just said, policy level changes are already there, but yet the law has not succeeded yet. Like it only saw a small change, like from the 44 cities that applied that rule, only 2 succeed, which means that they lack of individual responsibility. So we need to prioritize on individual responsibility. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you for your time. That's all from me.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The first speaker of the government team spent 7 minutes and 3 seconds.
Okay, so I call upon the first speaker from the opposition team, Miss Ayu Anya.
Okay, thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we live in one of the most polarized times in history. In one side, there are people who commit terrorism, who fight against what is happening to our situations, climate change, global warming, and many more. But on the other side, there are also people who sabotage their environmental movement to save their jobs and maybe their communities. We believe that environment is something very crucial to each one of us on our daily lives. To every sectors, maybe law, businesses, health, we surely need to keep an eye to our environment. We believe that if we need to rule or manage something that is highly impactful to our big societies, we surely need stricter environmental policies. Even maybe the policies will somehow be broken by the societies, but policies are definitely made by big corporations who are doing things for people, for big societies, or maybe a government. The opposition team believe that the individuals might fight for they think it's right, or maybe everybody is right. But still, we cannot make one special movement to actually move one issues on average. Policies are well made because they have considered different aspects economically for different societies, maybe low income, middle income, and many more. We believe that individuals cannot be held accountable without a policy that serves a tool to get people to believe and do something. First, the policies have considered different aspects, as I said before. It is carefully thought out, well thought, research, and data, and has a well-rounded view for everybody involved: corporation, economy, and also individuals. And everybody have the same obligation to follow and support it. The power of the policies are also have the ability to force our habit from the government's example, as the number one speaker said before. Talking about the use of the plastics, I think we can see that nowadays on many supermarkets are prohibiting us to use plastics. Instead, we have to use paper bags, or we have to buy the plastic bags. And on the other hand, policy has clear parameters and goals also, and also well-integrated campaigns and agendas that are supported by the law. That's it from the opposition team. Thank you.
Thank you. The first speaker of the opposition team spent 2 minutes and 24 seconds.
Okay, thank you. I will call upon the second speaker from the government team, Ms. Kansa Mumpuni.
Thank you for the time. First of all, I would like to bring out that there's several points that has been said by the first speaker of the opposition team that's actually already disputed in even my first speaker's speech. First of all, the first speaker of the proposition team said that policies is well thought out and is for everyone, and everyone has the obligation to follow it. It's true. It's true. Policies, of course, as policies is law, and it has to. Everyone has to follow it. But the truth is, as we can see, like my first speaker has already said, it's about the plastic bag thingy. There's people still don't follow it. There's 44. Like my first speaker has said, there's 44 province that is already implemented, and only 2 of them works well. And that's largely because why does this policies work in 2 states and not the other 42? It's because the people in these 2 states are aware of the problems that is faced we face now in the environment, and they have their own responsibility, has the sense to actually make changes to follow these rules. That's the point, because if we have rules, the rules hasn't worked. Why the rule hasn't worked is because people don't have that individual responsibility. So if we don't need new laws, we don't need reforms, we don't need more, I don't know, bureaucracy in solving this problem. What we need is the people to understand that it is also in their best interest, and it's also because of they have to contribute to this cause if we want to save this planet and if we want to save the environment. And the next thing that the second speaker said is the force of habit. Like I said, laws doesn't do a lot of it doesn't really help with forcing habit, because habit comes from the inside. Habit comes from the person, and that is why again we need individual responsibilities in solving this case. How are we going to make that individual responsibility works? The easiest thing right now is, of course, social media, because social media is big. Everyone has it. Everyone can reach it. Everyone can see it, and it is humane that the people see it and they can implement it themselves. So what we propose is we make this thing cool. Like if I can give you a little bit of I guess a little bit of proof. It is not about, and this is not Indonesia, but let's take the case of the shelters in America. Before the viral things hits, before it hits the internet, animal shelters are always full. Animals are being killed regularly, and it's generally miserable. But after it becomes viral like this, there's a lot of cute animals in the shelters, and then you can adopt this and you can help instead of buying new like pure breeds and things like that. People start adopting, and right now most of the shelters are empty, and that is a good thing. We can implement the same thing in Indonesia with this case about this environmental issues. We can make it cool to maybe use metal straws instead of the plastic one. We can make it cool for people to bring bags to the supermarket. And the other thing is, of course, the second thing is, of course, education, because of course education changes everything. One of the things that makes these policies didn't work because one, it lacks socialization, and second, the people just don't have that base of understanding of why it is so urgent to be environmentally friendly now. when in truth the situation is really grave and we need to change soon. And how do we educate people? First, the easiest way, of course, is to the children. How do we educate children? We put new curriculum in their school. We taught them about how our environment affects everything and how we must take part in keeping this environment as healthy as possible for the continuity of the people. And for the public in general, the best way is, of course, like I've said, social media works, but the other is also socialization. Like maybe to RT or LW, we can give like socialization to the people, to the families, and there maybe give them like the skills, maybe to make compost, or maybe to reuse their plastic bags, reuse their what reusable things they have, like plastic boxes that they get from takeouts, especially now in the time of pandemic, and things like that. So that is what we need to do. And to recap, essentially, we to make the big things work, to make the law works, what law we already have, we need that individual responsibility, because that is the core of things. Because who do this law? Who I guess live through these laws? It's the people, right? That's
This
why
is
we
a
need to
brief
employ
tour of my hotel room.
That's why we need to employ the people to have their piece at this, to have their go, to contribute to this cause, and to essentially and little things adds up, right? There's one person and there's another, and then there's like a bunch of them. There's the city, and then there's the country, and eventually, if every individual in the world is have this responsibility, then of course, then the laws will work, or even eventually they don't need laws because it becomes a habit. And if it becomes a habit, then all things are good, right? So that's what we need. We need to make them realize, and we need to make them internalize it, and we need to make them follow it. Like, this is also your part, and it is also in your interest to do this, to keep the environment good and alive. And I believe that is all I have to say. And thank you for your time. And again, I implore you to vote for this motion tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The second speaker of the government team spent 7 minutes and 17 seconds.
Okay, next, I will call upon the second speaker from the opposition team, Ms. Fauzia Hafida.
Okay, I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you, the government, for bringing a good, I guess, urgency, kind of like a trailer of the urgency that we have here, why this the House proposes the motions for individual advocacy for the environment. But I think they still doesn't give the bigger picture, the real urgencies of the main problem, main cause of why policy doesn't work. First of all, they stated that it is not effective. We can see that policies regarding the plastic bag doesn't really do a lot of changes that we can see, as we see by the amount of plastic bag we saw on the streets, on the sea, on waterways. But I think what that rapidness of change, it will not be guaranteed by advocacy of individual activism. Why? Because as what the first speaker of the opposition had said, there's a lot of polarization going on about this topic, debates going on about whether we should do there's two different polarizing sides, one that really advocate environment to the point that they will actually break the law and actually will boycott corporations such as electricity corporations, oil corporations, in order to really help the environment without really taking into account the economic and social aspect they will result, such as in unemployment. And in the society, there's people who are paranoid about the fact that environment activism will crash their jobs, will ruin their communities' main of income, such as oil or even fossil fuels. And these polarizations will result to a bigger problem, will explode one day and created a toll on this effectivity of, and also this movement of helping the environment. And I would like to touch, I would like to touch that the definition in which the government has said about advocacy, individual responsibility, is an incremental policy change. I believe they failed to define it in the most in its true way, which is advocacy is basically an individual's I guess actions or individual belief to implement their actions, or also in their communities to help the environment, whether the policy advocated or not. And on the other hand, what they define is really relates to the policy, the importance of policy and the crisis regarding the environment. And the second, I would like to point out some of the clashes that we have made. First of all, is that the government has stated that we don't need bureaucracy, and what we need is people to understand by themselves that the environment is good. Helping the environment is good for themselves. I believe this is not effective, and this is not the best way to do it, because imagine people who live in their mansion, they don't understand that the plastic bag they use will cause flooding to a lot of people, to people who are living in slums. And how would they know how bad this plastic crisis actually is without actually seeing them? They can see it through like media and videos, but I mean they will just say, oh, too bad, and then goes on with their life. By implementing policies, they are actually enforced on the habit to actually be zero waste or help the environment. They will adopt the habit of not using plastic bags anymore. And even if they go to other, for example, the plastic ban that is enacted already in Bogor and Bali right now actually helps educate people who doesn't even care at all about the environmental movement because they are not impacted, or maybe they don't understand it, to actually adopt the habit and also learn more from it. And I believe this is the importance of policies. And second, I would like to point out the argument in which the government has said about that social media is good enough for the advocacy for the future of environmental activism. I believe this is very dangerous to adopt, because social media trends can swing in very different directions. As like what I said before, what if environment activism can lead to environment activism that is uncontrolled by policies and does not take into account the different arguments of different sides, actually leads to an economic crisis where people who are too focused on helping the environment doesn't care about how it impacts the industries and impact jobs and unemployment. And this can lead the pendulum into the other direction, where people actually go against environmental activism and connotate it in a bad, negative ways. And this is dangerous. This is why social media cannot be taken into account on helping with the environment movement. In other hand, like what my first speaker already stated, that actually policies has clear parameters, clear goals, and also clear campaign activities that can help, they are also taking into account what the industries and everybody has about the environmental conditions right now, not only about individuals who are delusional in their belief about saving the environment, but it doesn't really care. They don't know about the reality that is going on, how different things can impact one another in a domino effect. Another thing I want to point out is that the government stated that education is important and it should be integrated in curriculum and schools. And this is exactly why we need policies. Policies help put curriculum regarding how we can approach these environmental policies in a unanimity way that it is well-rounded, not only blinded by one extreme view of another. That is that what's happening right now. People have different view of what we should do to help the environment. And this is actually on the loss of the government side. They're pointing out why policy is needed. And also they also say about socialization in RT, RW, which is a sub-government communities. They still related to government. This can only be done and will be in the most effective way if socialization is the same in every RT and RW. If everybody has the same conception of it and has no different beliefs on like what should be done to help the environment the best way. This is why policy is incremental. This is why policy is very is needed to help this put into this environmental movement going effectively and unanimously. That doesn't everybody is on the same page and has I guess no different views about it. And the last thing I want to point out, the individual responsibility should be prioritized. I want to point out what the government said about individual responsibility should be prioritized. But I believe that the policy making is also taking into account individual responsibility. Actually, by giving them people who doesn't care about environment, if we give them a clear goal parameter of how much we can achieve by following this campaign together unanimously and with everybody's in the same page, people are more likely to adopt individual responsibility or than like campaigns who are very different in views.
Okay.
Thank you very much. This is the opposition.
Okay, thank you, team opposition team.
Thank you very much. The second speaker of opposition team has spent 7 minutes and 28 seconds.
Okay, next I will call the third speaker from the government team, Miss Irva Mutiara. Start now.
I will go in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, on today's debate, I would like to summarize what is the debate actually in this room today, and I would like to explain how our team still stand till the very end that we propose to prioritize individual responsibility over policy level changes. Now, before we move on, there's one statement that's still lingering in my head right now. The other side of the team said that policy changes will make people adopt the individual responsibility. Ladies and gentlemen, with the evidence that we already told you, it is not possible in case of Indonesia, because with every policy there is in Indonesia, from mask, from social distancing, until now with plastic evidence, it is still not working because people just don't have the individual responsibility. Now let's take the example, ladies and gentlemen, of a city, of a village in Japan, in rural Japan, that is the cleanest town in Japan, in Asia actually. And what makes them be the cleanest and be the most environmentally friendly village, ladies and gentlemen? The answer is because they are responsible to their own, because they have this individual responsibility and they work together with their community without policy level changes, because they don't start with the policy level changes. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before I move on to summarize, I would like to challenge a few fundamental arguments that they give us. The first one is they said that rapidness of change will not be guaranteed by our proposal, which is to prioritize individual responsibility. But ladies and gentlemen, on their side of argument, on their side of proposal, the long-term solution will not be reached considering the evidence, considering the basic fact that just people need the individual responsibility before they move on to a bigger scale, which is a policy level changes. Now, they also said that about unemployment, about environment movement that will change. For example, people working in oil and gas community, it will change their situation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is a very big question. How about their policy level changes, ladies and gentlemen? Policy level changes, as we know, is more imposing to these people. These policy level changes will actually be imposing to these people who are unemployed, people who are have their dire situation, while individual responsibility has no imposing characteristic. And even though they don't have a imposing characteristic with this advocacy, we believe that, ladies and gentlemen, environmental movement will be achieved. Now, they also said that people in good mention, as they said, doesn't realize the effect, and it is dangerous for social media because social media can swing right and forth. But ladies and gentlemen, as we already told you by my second speaker, our mechanism is about education, and they said that education is a part of a policy. But ladies and gentlemen, education can be achieved anywhere. Education can be achieved in everywhere, and we are going to educate people to advocate people to the root, to know that environmentally movement is there and we should go with it. Now, moving on to my argument, to our summarize today. We know the book of Atomic Habits, ladies and gentlemen. The book of Atomic Habits told us that the smallest thing, the smallest activities that you do every day, it builds up. It builds up, and finally it becomes a habit. It finally becomes something that is worth your time, and it will be there forever for your whole time, your whole life. Now, imagine if this atomic habits is applicated not by one person but by a lot of person. Then surely a community, for example, or for example a whole nation and the whole world could actually go with this environmentally movement. And that is what we bring in this motion today. The first one would be why individual actually matters, because one small person doing small thing, it will contribute, ladies and gentlemen. It does not have to be a complete environmentally friendly movement. It does not mean that you have to no meat or no plastic. It does not mean like that, because we're not the imposing type, but at least with the responsibility, with knowing that people would not throw their garbage everywhere. Indonesia would be clean because it is based by their own desire. And then the second one, the change is faster and it's spontaneous because it's come from ourselves, and it is also a long-term solution, ladies and gentlemen, because it comes from ourselves, and it will go to our generation, and people and our generation would be proud of us because we do that. And then the third one, it will not give big impact. Yes, it will not give a big, it not will be rapid, ladies and gentlemen, as the other side of the team said, but it is a long-term effect. And then the second one, the second argument that we bring is why, by proposing with this motion, the advocacy of environmental movement would be easier and faster to achieve its aim. Why? Because demanding changes would be easier, considering that everyone already have the responsibility to do so. And when it's run by their own desire, it'll go smoother. And with individual responsibility as the fundamental, as the foundation, we can now build the tall building called policy level changes. And that's why we need to prioritize the individual responsibility right now rather than later, because it will not change if we prioritize policy level changes. It is just imposing, as now we can see plastic movement in Indonesia. Now, the third one why it's justified to prioritize individual responsibility over policy level changes. It is justified, ladies and gentlemen, because as we know, this government policy level changes, it's taking a lot of time. It is not also rapid, and it needs a lot of bureaucracy. It needs a lot of stakeholder, and it needs to think a lot of stakeholder. As I said, there's the one who is benefited. There's always the one who is at loss. For example, the plastic evidence that there's some people working in the plastic industry would be at loss because of this environmentally friendly movement. And then the second one would be, if only several people asking for a change, only several people will work towards that change. Only several people, only that small community would actually do that change and ask the government to change for them. But if only several people do that, it will not go smoothly. We need the whole people, we need the whole country, we need the whole nation to to just work it out. And with their individual responsibility coming from their own heart, we believe that it will give them more freedom to actually do so and to actually ask government to change the policy. That's why we believe that we should prioritize individual responsibility for environmental changes over the policy level changes. Without further ado, we believe that that you should propose. Thank you.
Thank you for the uh, third speaker of the government team has spent 7 minutes and 26 seconds.
Okay, next I will call the third speaker from the opposition team, Mr. Chrysostomus. Can start now.
Okay, am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I will begin my speech in 3, 2, Good night, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the speakers who have made a speech before me. And in this current moment, I'm going to rebuttal some of the arguments from the opposing, from the government side, whilst strengthening the arguments from my side. First of all, we've been circling around the argument. The opposing team have been circling around on the argument of own desires and self-will will make a better change regarding the situation. And also, the first speaker of the opposing team has already stated policy is supported by laws, and I agree by it. And here I'm going to explain. When a policy is supported by laws, when we're not heeding to it, when we're not obeying it, we will get consequence. And people, human, we tend to do this policy because we don't want to get the consequence. It's not assured 100%, but there's a reason behind it. There's a reason behind the existence of law. Also, by using own desires and self-will, every individual have different parameter opinion, and they're not on the same page. Even if they're fighting for the same environment, it is possible for them to have different opinions in one another. And that's why a policy is a bigger scale, is a bigger scope, which apply to all of them. It will apply to all of them.
Sir?
I'm sorry?
On that point, sir?
Point of interest? No.
Thank you.
And the second one, which I'm going to bring is the point from the second speaker of bringing up social media and making it cool, making it a habit to be environmental friendly. It doesn't prove anything. There's nothing special about it. We can also make cool about obeying policy and saving this environment through social media as well. So the argument is false. And then I'm going to move on to the next argument. The third speaker of the opposing team said that the argument from my team doesn't work in Indonesia. It won't work. It doesn't apply. How can you say that? And first of all, the motion never stated that it's geographically in Indonesia. We're talking about the whole nation, the whole world. The opposing team doesn't provide any specific data on why it won't work. Now let me continue. When we're talking about arguments, the one thing that we really need is data. And I will provide some data for you. According to Green Living and Environmental Friendly Rankings, there are 5 countries. There are 5 countries at the top of these rankings. The first one is Sweden, the second one is Switzerland, the third one is Finland, the fourth one is Japan, and the fifth one is Norway. And what's the similarity between all of these countries? A data provided by Yale University on Environmental Performance Index, they evaluate these countries upon impact of government policies. So the similarity of those countries, they have a proper government policies regarding the environmental and friendly green living environment. And those policies also have conditions which some countries have not fulfilled. And that's why these countries are on the top of the list. The conditions are they have to be relevant, concise, unambiguous, and action-oriented. Guess what? When it's action-oriented, it's also kind of covered the part of individual willingness to do this environmental friendly campaign. So that's why a government policies will always be better than individual will or self-desire, because it is concise. It applies to everybody, and if you don't obey it, of course, it will lead to law and you will get consequent regarding the situation. So on that matter, The arguments from the government team doesn't suffice the stance of their motion. I also want to add that when policy is supported by laws, yeah, we have tendency to obey it. And the opposing team also circling around habit and self-desire. So when we're doing it out of our own self-desire or will, it doesn't really satisfy us. It's only a habit, but if we don't do it or if we disobey it, there aren't really any consequences, and that's why policy is very needed. And judges, ladies and gentlemen, if you care about the environmental change in this world, you want something that has a big scope of impact, and in this case, it's policy level changes. And we're still on the same page, and our house is still on the same page. We need policy level changes more than individual and self-desire changes regarding the situation. Thank you for the floor, and thank you for the time.
Thank you. The third speaker of the opposition team has spent 6 minutes and 16 seconds.
Okay, thank you. So now I will call upon the reply speaker from the opposition team, Ms. Fauzia Hafida. You can start now.
Okay, allow me to start in 3, 2, 1. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As we have come to the conclusion of this debate, allow me to summarize this debate. First of all, the government has created an urgency that policy changes is not very effective. It's slow and not sustainable on saving the environment, in which an individual advocacy should be adopted. And for a better trade-off with we as the oppositions has pointed out a lot of the trade-offs are actually not beneficial for actually addressing the urgency in which they have created. First of all, I'd like to point out that the government hasn't addressed at all the reality that there's a lot of polarizing views regarding environmental changes, and even in the climate change itself, there's still not a uniform view of whether how rapid it is going on. Even some people doesn't believe in climate change, and how we should actually could bring these people together to actually make an impact on saving the environment. They just talk about how we should make it a trend and social media, how we should popularizing it. But a trend is not a trend, and it can swing another way if any event, any opportunities trigger it. In which I've pointed out that an idealistic views of the environment changes by activists can actually limit the productivity of industries and also create conflicts in the society, which can lead to a lot of swinging views in social media. So it is not a stable, it's not a sustainable, ironically, solutions to saving the environment. And in the other hand, we actually want to the opposition still offers policy as the best way. Why? Because it has clear parameters, it has goals to achieve real environmental changes that people can agree upon, whether they are from industry, they are individuals of any economic backgrounds, and also different communities. And I would like we also would like to point out some of the clashes that happens here is that, first of all, policy doesn't create big changes and doesn't really, it's not really effective because it doesn't ignite the individual or individual calling for helping the environment. And this is we already rebuted it by saying that actually the ban of plastic in Indonesia has created big changes, and the government is lefting that out behind, where it actually create big awareness to people who doesn't really know the impact of plastic bag because they are sheltered by it. And it forced the habit to people again who's not impacted by it to, and also educate them at the same time. And socialization is an incremental part of policies, and also because it is supported by like goals and also parameters and well researched, it is actually more effective if it's implemented along with policy other than individuals' idealisms of what good for the environment. And another thing is that Also, the thing with they also point out that individual responsibility will lead to bigger change, but again, they didn't take into account the polarization that's happening. There's a lot of conflicts, and it will just create more dividing views in the society. They haven't the government haven't been able to address that at all. And this is why, if you really care about the environment and why we should support it, we urge you to vote for the opposition. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you. The reply speaker of the opposition team has spent 3 minutes and 38 seconds.
Okay, next I will call upon the reply speaker from the government team. Miss Miss Kansa can start now.
Thank you for your time and the opportunity. And for now, I will summarize a bit of what we have. Well, the proposition team said that we believe that individual responsibility will eventually lead to the obeying of the law that's already exists, while the opposition team said that they say policy level changes will result in individual responsibility. But let's start small. First of all, we'll talk about a little bit of the with the mechanism, which is in which they have none. They don't have a clear mechanism. They don't explain the detailed version of their mechanism. With the statement, we don't know how can we achieve their want situation. While we already stated, then we already gave the data that policy level changes just don't work, because we already give you the example, that is the laws in 1997 about the plastics, and right now in 2020 to 2021, people are still littering literally everywhere, even in the time of pandemic where people should be inside. Next thing that we're gonna touch is that they put emphasis on the fact that they're gonna make a policy, and that with a policy, then the people have no choice but to follow it. But then again, if it is a policy, if it is a law, then it doesn't reach their heart, isn't it? And if it doesn't reach their heart, the moment they have the opportunity to bail out, to not follow those laws, they're going to bounce back. They're going to use plastics again. They're going to litter again.
Point of interest.
No, thank you. I'm still talking. And the next thing is that they say they touch a little bit about the fact that if we implement, I don't understand why they talk with with policy. We don't condone about making of policies, but essentially they touched a little bit about the fact that if we implement a lot of these, and then there will be a lot of people losing their jobs, especially in the oil industry. But the fact is, we already told you that if we're talking about the oil industry, the fact that you're going to implement these policy level changes is going to affect them more than if we, as a whole, if we put emphasis on individual responsibility. Why? Because if you already have, if everyone has individual responsibility, then corporation have no room but to follow what the people want, because they, of course, corporation have to stay popular. And the next thing is, essentially what I'm trying to say is that we have a clear goal. We have a clear way. We already explained you our mechanism. Because how about we're going to give the people education, how they to understand this case. And next thing they touch about is about social media, and the fact that they thought we put emphasis on social media, when the fact is we are not. We are putting emphasis on education. Social media is a tool of education in this case, because social media has a huge reach, and everyone can access it, and it is one of the most proven that is one of the most effective tool to spread out word, to spread out the news in today's world, especially again in this time of pandemic where we don't actually meet people, and we most of the time we're on our phone. And that is our mechanism, the clearance of our argument, the fact that we have not lost. We have proved that laws doesn't work in our backs. That backs us as the reason why we won tonight. And that is all I have to say. And again, I implore you, the board, to vote on this motion tonight, because as you can see, that we clearly win this debate. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for the government team.
Thank you very much for the reply speaker of the government team. You have spent 4 minutes and 26 seconds.
Okay, this is the end. The end of debate. As the debate is a silent round, the debaters might directly process to debaters hall for the breaking announcement. Thank you.
Thank you, DTI. Thank you, LO.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mau tanya ini langsung ke main room lagi ya?
Iya.
Oh iya, oke, makasih.
Thank you.